So over the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen quite a few acquisitions happen in the video game space, and most recently, the largest one with Activision Blizzard and Microsoft, still ongoing even after an entire year. But now we're starting to hear that Sony could be working to raise money, maybe to make another big move. Well, I'm going to go over that here today, as well as some more down-to-earth possibilities. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new here to the Spawn Wave Plus channel. Let's head over here. This was posted up on Financial Times, where they go over kind of the process and how Sony is going to work to raise capital and more or less what their plan is to spend that money on. Say, Sony said it would consider spinning off and relisting shares of its financial services arm to bolster investments in its entertainment business. They mentioned it delighted investors because 2 or 3 years ago, Sony had essentially brought their entire financial arm like in-house, and it seemed to confuse investors because if you think of Sony, you mostly think of entertainment, whether it's TVs or PlayStation. Even outside of that, you might think of movies and cameras. That's sort of all of that, again, playing into the idea of entertainment being the common goal. So the idea of it being more financials seemed kind of strange to them, and now it appears Sony, as they mention here, is U-turning on strategy, and what they would be doing is taking a smaller stake and listing shares, at which point they would be able to sell and then get capital to reinvest into their entertainment side. And this, of course, has driven all kinds of speculation as to what they'd be spending. The estimated $8 billion is apparently what they could raise up to. So clearly, people are throwing around all kinds of big-time names. I mean, you can think about it this way. Microsoft spent, $7.5 billion on ZeniMax and Bethesda, and that was considered a pretty large investment at that time, a pretty large acquisition. Nowhere near the level of the almost $70 billion we see getting thrown around for Activision Blizzard, but still sizable with the intellectual properties, the studio, the talent, all that stuff that was within ZeniMax and Bethesda. But it is very important to note, as they mention here, in order to expand growth over the medium to longer term, we will need the ability to invest in image sensors and the entertainment business at a completely new level. I think that's important to remember that Sony does more than just PlayStation. I know PlayStation is very successful for them, but they obviously have a lot of other ventures that they're interested in. I mean, you could take a look at, as they show here, in the past 5 years, Sony has acquired EMI Music Publishing. That was for $2.3 billion. $1.2 billion to get Crunchyroll. And, I mean, that's not video game related. So just those two combined, $3.5 billion, which is right around what they spent on Bungie. So it's not like that they wouldn't necessarily spend large chunks of money on the video game side. It's just that they might be thinking this $6 to $8 billion, we'll say, could be used in all different parts of the company, and maybe you don't get that big splash acquisition. Some people are saying like Take-Two or Capcom or Square Enix, and one of those might be kind of possible, but I don't think Sony's going to all of a sudden show up one morning with a press release saying that they now own Grand Theft Auto or Final Fantasy. No, I think right now Sony has kind of shown their strategy now going forward, and that is more strategical acquisitions. One that makes sense outside of just that studio being able to produce a game. Bungie is a great example. I think they overspent for Bungie, but it makes sense for them considering they are launching a large line of live service games. Bungie has gone through it a bit with the original Destiny that released, then Destiny 2, and kind of how to navigate that space. Destiny's been around for a while now, and as a live service game that then also launched a successful sequel with Destiny 2, which is hard enough to do on its own right in the live service space. Look at what's going on with Overwatch 2 right now. I mean, clearly, Sony wanted them for things outside of just Destiny. They want to know how they can run and what pitfalls they could come across with live services so they can essentially fast-track the process for a bunch of these games that they are making with studios that don't really have the experience necessarily to do it with the live service side. So I'm thinking that's more or less what they're going to do. And maybe even studios that they've worked with, like what we saw with Haven or Firewalk, where they haven't released a game yet, but they still wanted to acquire them, probably because the price was lower than if they released a really, really good game and it exploded in terms of potential and value for the talent there. Bring them under the Sony umbrella now when the price is low, rather than later on when the price is much higher. Most likely they'll announce an acquisition of a studio you've never really heard of, and I'm thinking maybe like Nix's. That was for more or less their PC side, which I do think Sony will continue to double and triple down on over the next 10 years. So maybe they look around for another studio that is good at porting stuff to PC so they can continue to kind of fast track that process. Or maybe they just want another support studio like Valkyrie so that they can get these games out in a more timely fashion, because the thing we're seeing now is these games are just taking longer and longer to develop. So rather than taking 7 years to make a game, if they can get it out in 5, to them that's probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars of investment now. We also know that Sony is expanding into the mobile gaming side, and with their recent acquisition of Savage Game Studios, could be another sector that they're looking at to acquire studio, just to really get things moving there and build up different releases. But the thing that I think would be interesting is Square Enix, and not necessarily Square Enix as a whole. Square has talked about how they're considering looking at their different divisions that they have, creative divisions, as almost separate entities that companies can come in and buy shares or stakes in. And we see kind of the relationship between Square and Sony, especially with games like Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Rebirth, and then the final game in that trilogy. It's a very close, tight-knit relationship right now. And it seems like maybe Sony would want to make it more official and actually have a stake in some of these games that they are already kind of funding through publishing deals and all these different things. But it's interesting to see Sony continue to double down on the entertainment side, even working to spin off and sell parts of their financial arm, which, again, seems to make investors pretty happy. But I feel like we will see some different acquisitions from Sony, but there are probably going to be a couple that get announced that people have no idea where these studios came from, or it might be more on the side of image sensors, AI, which is exploding online right now, or even just smaller support studios, just to kind of tie everything together for the second half of the PlayStation 5 generation, and most likely the start of the PlayStation 6. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. With Sony moving to raise upwards of $8 billion, do you think they have a large acquisition on their mind, or will it be broken up into a bunch of smaller ones? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.